Every year, millions of visitors stand beneath Mount Rushmore and look up in awe at 4 enormous faces carved into solid granite. To most people, it feels timeless, as if the mountain was always meant to look this way. But Mount Rushmore is not a natural monument. It is the result of one of the most dangerous, complex, and precisely engineered construction projects in American history. Behind those familiar faces lies a story of controlled explosions, workers suspended hundreds of feet in the air, optical illusions carved into stone, abandoned chambers hidden inside the mountain, and engineering methods so precise that a single mistake could have erased the entire project. This is not just a story about sculpture. It is the story of how engineers learn to reshape a mountain without destroying it. Chapter 1: The Impossible Mountain. When work began in 1927, Mount Rushmore was not an empty canvas. It was a towering granite wall filled with fractures, pressure points, and unpredictable stress lines. Granite is one of the hardest natural materials on Earth. It resists cutting, it fractures unevenly, and once cracked, it cannot be repaired. Most experts believed carving detailed human faces into it was nearly impossible. Before a single tool touched the rock, engineers spent months studying the mountain's internal structure. They mapped fault lines, measured pressure zones, and analyzed how the stone might respond to explosives. Their greatest fear was not slow progress, it was collapse. One uncontrolled blast could have shattered entire sections beyond repair. From the very beginning, Mount Rushmore was treated not as art, but as a high-risk engineering experiment.
Chapter 2: Destroying rock without destroying the mountain. Contrary to popular belief, Mount Rushmore was not carved mainly with chisels. Nearly 90% of the rock was removed using explosives. But this was not reckless blasting. Engineers developed a technique called honeycombing. Workers drilled hundreds of small, closely spaced holes into the granite, forming grid-like patterns. Explosives were then placed inside these holes in precise quantities. When detonated, the charges removed thin layers of stone instead of massive chunks. This allowed sculptors to control how the mountain broke apart. Too much force would shatter it. Too little would leave rough, unstable surfaces. Every blast was calculated. Every explosion was measured. The mountain was dismantled layer by layer, like peeling stone skin. Chapter 3: Working on the Edge of Nothing. There were no cranes, no modern safety harnesses, no automated drilling systems. Workers were lowered from the top of the mountain in simple wooden chairs suspended by steel cables. They hung hundreds of feet above the ground. From these chairs, they drilled holes, placed explosives, and shaped stone. Wind could swing them sideways. Falling debris could strike them. Explosions occurred only meters away, yet fatalities were remarkably rare. Why? Because the project functioned like a military operation. Every blast followed a schedule. Every worker knew where to be. Every movement was coordinated. What looked chaotic from below was carefully coordinated from above.
Chapter 4: Turning Stone into Living Faces. After explosives removed the bulk of the mountain, the real artistry began. But even this stage was deeply technical. Sculptors used pneumatic drills and hand tools to refine facial features. They followed scaled models, transferring measurements from small plaster replicas to massive stone surfaces. Nothing was freehand. Distances were calculated, angles were adjusted, depths were measured. Even slight errors could distort proportions when viewed from the ground. What appears perfectly natural is the result of mathematical correction. The faces were engineered to look right, not simply carved. Chapter 5: The Eyes That Watch Back. One of the most remarkable features of Mount Rushmore is the eyes. From certain angles, they appear alive, focused, intentional. This effect was engineered. Each pupil contains a recessed cavity that creates shadow contrast. This gives the illusion of depth, even though the surface is solid stone. Without this design, the faces would look flat and lifeless. Light, shadow, and geometry were used to simulate emotion. Stone was made to behave like flesh. Chapter 6: The Bumping Process.
After drilling and shaping, the surface still showed tool marks. To remove them, workers used a technique called bumping. Using pneumatic hammers, they tapped thousands of tiny indentations into the surface. This smoothed irregularities while preserving texture. The result reduced glare and enhanced visibility from below. What looks polished is actually controlled roughness. Every imperfection was intentional. Chapter 7. The hidden chamber nobody talks about. Few visitors realize that Mount Rushmore contains a secret chamber. Behind Lincoln's Head, engineers blasted a tunnel into the mountain. It was intended to become the Hall of Records, a vault for important documents and historical records. The chamber was partially completed. Then funding collapsed. The Great Depression drained resources. Political support faded. Work stopped. The tunnel was sealed and forgotten for decades. The monument most people think is finished is not.
Chapter 8. Engineering under constant pressure. Mount Rushmore was built under relentless pressure. Money ran out repeatedly. Equipment was primitive. Political support fluctuated. Weather caused delays. At several points, the entire project nearly ended. Engineers also discovered unstable rock sections that threatened long-term durability. These areas had to be reinforced or redesigned mid-construction. There were no computers, no simulations. Most calculations were done by hand. Every decision carried permanent consequences. Chapter 9. Making something look effortless. Today, Mount Rushmore feels inevitable, as if it simply belongs. But that illusion was engineered. Proportions were altered to compensate for perspective. Measurements were exaggerated so features would look balanced from far below. Symmetry was adjusted. Depth was modified. Angles were manipulated. What you see is not exactly what was carved. It is what engineers wanted you to see. Chapter 10. The mountain that became a machine. Mount Rushmore is often described as a sculpture. In reality, it is a mechanical system carved into stone. It contains structural load planning, controlled fracture zones, optical engineering, surface physics, risk management systems. Every element exists for a reason. It is a monument built through discipline, mathematics, and restraint, not just creativity.